What is up, folks? Welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. And today I am here to talk about the first book in yet another classic fantasy series that I see keep getting that I keep seeing appear on best of lists all over the place. Maybe not all of them, but quite a few of them, especially like the old lists. So it's been on my radar for a number of years, and I actually recently got the opportunity to finally jump into it. And what I'm talking about is Sheepfarmer's Daughter, the first book of the Deeds of Paxenarian trilogy by Elizabeth Moon. So this series, this book is essentially the book that introduces us to Paxenarian, the wait for it, the daughter of a sheep farmer. Yeah. So she's filled her head with stories of being a soldier, and then she faces an unfortunate reality of her situation when her father tries to marry her off. So instead of tolerating that, she flees. She goes to the nearest town where she joins up with a mercenary company, and she sets out on military adventures. Yeah, that pretty much sums up the entire book. Seriously though, like this is not just like classic fantasy. This is also military fantasy, which is it's not like in the vein of it's not like in the vein of the Black Company, that kind of thing, but it is similar in the fact that it focuses very heavily on military life. Like Paxenarian, for the majority of this book, Paxenarian is very much a grunt in the army. She has different adventures based on her station, and it results in some interesting things about this book. So, first things first, we get a very realistic look at what life as essentially a pawn in an army must have been like for people of must be like for the average soldier in army in a fantasy setting that we would typically read as a NPC in another book. We get her, how she's trained. We get a look at the bureaucracy and the structure of the army, that kind of thing. Surprisingly honorable, I would think, given how these books can go. But anyway, moving on to that. One of the things I think people may dislike early on is that pretty much out the gate, as soon as Pax joins the army, she faces and content warning / trigger warning here. She faces a sexual assault, and it happens off camera. It doesn't devolve into it, like we don't see what happens, and it was. I feel like this. It's safe to provide this as a quote unquote spoiler. It was unsuccessful, but it's a situation that Elizabeth Moon deals to decide with up front. Because whether we like it or not, as a woman in an army, sexual assault, and pretty much a woman anywhere, sexual assault is a fact of life, an unfortunate fact of life. So I guess she decided it was something she wanted to deal with head on, get it out of the way, because it pretty much never reappears over the course of the series. Like, as much as Pax is a woman in the army, and a rare one in that she never quite becomes like a sex object or anything like that. She's very much a soldier. She gains the respect of her comrades and of the people she eventually trains, and that kind of thing. Like, I guess, like it or hate it, it was a good choice to make, to just get it out of the way, rather than save it for the end. I don't know. But yeah, that's something that happens early on. But like I said, one thing that was pretty cool about this series is that it's very much told from the perspective of being a soldier in the army. So you have these big events going on in the background, and they do very much happen in the background. Like Pax, she does play a role in these events as they unfold, but by no means is she the star of the show. Like she may play a significant role here or there, but like the main characters, like the key players in these conflicts, she's far from one of them. Um, there is that. So because of that, like a lot of the things that I think would draw people to um, your typical classic fantasy, like in terms of like the politics and the characterization, these kind of things of some of these people, they don't happen in this book simply because it doesn't make sense for them to happen. So we have characters who we know a little bit about, just enough to get a feel for them as a person. But because of the fact that at the end of the day, Pax is very much a grunt, a private in this army, like there's not very many privates who would move among like high society, is there? So it makes sense that as readers, as we experience this world through the lens of Pax, there's only so much that we are capable of seeing. Um, there is the other fascinating thing about this is that there's a mystery component to it surrounding Pax and a certain artifact she gets into her possession, and some of the strange things that happens as a result of it. Now, Pax as a grunt surviving is some of these situations, instead of her just miraculously surviving every engagement, and it being called out as Deus Ex Machina, whatever you want to call it. Instead, Elizabeth Moon takes the very creative route of giving us a little mystery surrounding how she's able to survive all these scenarios, and giving us taking the opportunity to also incorporate some world building and some lore about this strange new world that we're in. And I like it. It was creatively done. It served multiple purposes at the same time, and it allowed our main character to be, in a way, superpowered without being superpowered. Like having just enough of essentially giving us a reason to justify suspension of disbelief as to why she's able to achieve what she achieves in many situations. So yeah, there's that. One of the things that I'm honestly not sure what I feel about is actually the Duke, that the owner, the leader of the mercenary company that Pax joins. Like this dude is a little too upright as a character. He's a little too honorable. He just seems a little bit too good to be true. Um, in terms of his portrayal. Maybe that's just me being cynical, but I have yet to meet like a person in any position of power who seems to genuinely care about his underlings to the extent that this Duke seems to care about them in any employee situation, I should say. Like yeah, there's caring about people, and then in my experience at least, like people, like employees care, but only to a certain extent, if they even do. But yeah, that may be one of the more fantastical parts of the book for me. That particular his particular characterization. Um, but yeah, what can I say about this book? It's a very solid um, military fantasy. It's not dark. It's not gritty, in the way of like when I think about like the Black Company and Malazan and these kind of things. It has that classic fantasy feel to it. At the same time, it's not a classic fantasy in the sense of how it of the type of story it tells, um, or at least in the way that it portrays that story unfolding, I should say. Um, like there's no chosen one. The main character isn't the greatest warrior who ever lived, like 2 weeks after picking up a sword for the first time. Nothing of that sort. Like the battles are realistic, the consequences of them are realistic, and yeah, like it was pretty well done overall. Like you, it was realistically done, as realistic as fantasy as a military fantasy novel could be, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Solid stuff. I'm going to be continuing to the series, and let's see how things go. I'm probably only going to read the trilogy for now. I think there are other books later in the series, but I'm not too interested in those at the moment. I'm just going to read the initial trilogy and get my thoughts. And yeah, if you like the sound of it, feel free to check it out. If you've been considering reading it and you're a fan of classic fantasy, epic fantasy, that kind of thing, it's certainly worth checking out. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.